There is great power in choosing new thoughts. This seemingly simple act holds the potential to revolutionize the way we experience life. The mind, capable of perception, imagination, and memory, shapes our reality in profound ways. Thoughts are not passive reflections of the world. They actively shape how we interpret events, respond to challenges, and envision the future. To grasp this truth fully, we must examine the nature of thought, the process of choice, and the transformative impact of deliberately shifting our mental landscape. At any moment, our minds are at work. The stream of consciousness flows endlessly, sometimes calm and coherent, other times chaotic and fragmented. These thoughts form the backdrop of our lives, coloring our emotions and guiding our actions. They shape the stories we tell ourselves. Yet many people remain unaware of their power, accepting thoughts as truth without question. But each thought is a creation, not a fact, and this distinction opens the door to change. Thoughts come from many sources: upbringing, culture, experiences, biology, and social influences. Often, they become habitual, forming mental grooves we follow repeatedly. A person who has long thought of themselves as a failure will often interpret every setback as confirmation of that belief, reinforcing a self-defeating loop. But what if they learned to question that thought? What if they chose a new one that opened a door rather than closed it? Choosing a new thought is both courageous and creative. It means stepping beyond familiar patterns and into the unknown. This can feel uncomfortable, especially when old thoughts are tied to deep emotions or long-held identities. But within this discomfort lies the possibility of transformation. New thoughts disrupt old patterns. They plant seeds for change. Humans are storytellers by nature. Stories help us make sense of the world and give meaning to our experiences. But stories are not fixed. They can be revised, reinterpreted, and rewritten. Choosing new thoughts is how we revise our personal narratives. It's how we become authors of our lives rather than characters in someone else's script. Science supports this idea. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, shows that we can rewire our brains through repeated mental activity. By consistently choosing empowering thoughts, we form new neural pathways that support healthier emotions and more constructive behaviors. This is not speculation, it's a scientific reality. The mind can change the brain, and the brain can change the mind. Choosing new thoughts is a way of taking responsibility for our inner world. While we cannot always control what happens to us, we can control how we interpret and respond to it. Psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl emphasized this. In man's search for meaning, even in the most horrific conditions, one retains the freedom to choose their thoughts. This freedom is the core of human dignity. But freedom of thought is not only a gift, it is a skill. It requires mindfulness, the ability to observe thoughts without becoming trapped by them. It requires discernment, recognizing which thoughts serve us and which do not. And it requires intention, the conscious choice to steer the mind rather than be steered by it. These capacities can be cultivated through practices like meditation, journaling, cognitive behavioral techniques, and self-reflection. Meditation helps us witness our thoughts without judgment, reminding us that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness behind them. This awareness creates space between stimulus and response. Journaling helps us uncover unconscious beliefs and opens the door to conscious change. Cognitive behavioral methods challenge distorted thinking and replace it with more balanced views. Reflection aligns our thinking with our values. This journey is personal. What works for one may not work for another. Some may find strength in affirmations. Others may use inquiry, asking, "Is this thought true?" Or, "What else could be true?" Creative expression through art, music, poetry can also be powerful tools for reshaping thought patterns. The key is to experiment, remain curious, and discover what resonates. Our thoughts shape our emotions. A single idea can spark joy or trigger despair. Guiding our thoughts allows us to influence how we feel. This isn't about ignoring pain, it's about understanding the link between thought and feeling. A person constantly thinking, "I'm not good enough," will likely feel anxious or ashamed, reinforcing that belief. But if they shift to, "I'm learning and growing," they foster compassion, resilience, and hope. This is self-empowerment, not denying reality, but choosing how to interpret it. It's the realization that our perspective shapes our experience. With practice, new thoughts become beliefs, beliefs form habits, and habits shape a new way of being. All transformation begins with a thought. Whether it comes as a quiet whisper or a sudden insight, it holds the seed of change. And from that seed, entire forests of experience can grow. This is not pathetic exaggeration, but the real-life truth for those who dare to guide their minds. Imagine someone weighed down by decades of self-doubt. Their inner voice tells them they're unworthy, incapable, unlovable. These thoughts form an invisible prison, but when they entertain even the smallest new thought, "Maybe I can try," a crack forms in the wall. That thought is a key, unlocking the possibility of change. Over time, it can dismantle even the most deeply rooted beliefs. This change takes time. Choosing new thoughts isn't a one-time act. It's a lifelong practice. Old thoughts will return, especially under stress. But with awareness and perseverance, we can gently redirect our minds. Each choice reinforces the new path and weakens the old. Like walking a new trail through dense woods, the path becomes clearer with repetition. Over time, these small shifts lead to profound results. People begin to feel lighter. They dream again. They become more open, resilient, and aligned with a version of themselves they once thought unreachable. This is not magic. It is the natural consequence of choosing new thoughts and creating new realities. Every innovation, every work of art, every breakthrough began with a single thought, often one that seemed ridiculous or impossible at first, but someone chose to nurture it. In the same way, a new personal thought can reshape identity, relationships, and purpose. Fear often blocks new thoughts. The mind prefers the familiar, even if it's painful, because it feels safe. But if we face that fear, observe it without letting it control us, we find freedom on the other side. Children exemplify this. They imagine freely, recover quickly, and embrace the unknown. We can reclaim that openness. Spiritual traditions echo this wisdom. Buddhism compares the mind to a garden with thoughts as seeds. Christianity speaks of transformation through renewing the mind. Yogic philosophy sees thought as the first step in shaping karma. Across cultures, sages have understood that changing the mind changes life. And yet, we are rarely taught to examine our thinking. We're told to change our circumstances, our looks, our possessions, but not our thoughts. This is a profound oversight because without inner change, all external changes are temporary. Real change begins with thought. Even our identities are collections of thoughts. Labels like, "I'm shy," "I'm unlucky," "I'm strong" are all thoughts. They may stem from experience, but they're not permanent. We can choose new ones, and with them, unlock new behaviors, potentials, and ways of being. Choosing new thoughts doesn't mean denying hardship. It means choosing how to relate to it. You can think, "This is the end," or "This is a new beginning." You can think, "I'm broken," or "I'm healing." The choice is always yours. That is the most empowering truth of all. No matter where you've been or what you've faced, you have the power to choose a new thought right now. And in doing so, you begin to change everything. But what does it really mean to change everything? It means the world you wake up to each morning begins to feel different. Not because the external elements have transformed overnight, but because your perception of them has. The sun feels warmer. Conversations become richer, challenges become opportunities rather than burdens. This shift is internal, and yet its effects ripple outward. Others begin to notice it. They see a lightness in your presence, a clarity in your choices, and sometimes, without even trying, you become an example to those around you. Your decision to choose new thoughts becomes a quiet revolution. not only in your own life, but in the lives of those who interact with you. This phenomenon is contagious. When you begin to think differently, you behave differently, and when you behave differently, the environment around you responds. This is not mysticism, it is basic psychology and social dynamics. Our thoughts influence our energy, our tone, our body language. People respond not only to our words, but to the unspoken emotional frequencies we emit. If you've ever walked into a room and felt tension without anyone speaking, you've experienced this subtle truth. When your thoughts are rooted in possibility, presence, and positivity, others feel safer, more inspired, and more open around you. This is how the power of choosing new thoughts transcends the individual and begins to shape communities, families, and cultures. Imagine what could shift if parents taught children how to think rather than what to think, if educators modeled reflective, empowering thought patterns, if leaders governed not from fear or reactivity, but from thoughtful discernment. These changes begin with individuals. One person choosing a new thought can, over time, influence hundreds or thousands of others. But let's not romanticize the process. There will be setbacks. There will be days when the old thoughts return with such force that they feel overwhelming. You might wonder if you're deluding yourself, if these new thoughts are just wishful thinking. And that is when your commitment will be tested. It's not about never having negative thoughts again. It's about returning to your power over and over, like a practice. Like a musician returns to their instrument or a writer returns to the page, you return to your awareness. You acknowledge the old thoughts, but you don't give them the final word. You remind yourself, I have the power to choose again. And each time you do, you build strength. Mental resilience, like physical fitness, is developed through repetition. The neural pathways of old habits may be deep, but they are not permanent. With consistent effort, new mental habits take root. You begin to notice more quickly when you've slipped into an old thought pattern, and the act of correction becomes more fluid. What once took enormous effort begins to feel natural. Eventually, it becomes second nature. You look back at your former way of thinking and marvel at how far you've come. Choosing new thoughts also awakens a deeper sense of self-respect. When you start believing you are worthy of better thoughts, you treat yourself with more kindness. You stop tolerating inner abuse. You stop allowing the voice in your head to speak to you in ways you wouldn't accept from anyone else. This internal boundary setting is life-changing. You begin to say, no, I will not entertain that thought today. I choose something more loving, more empowering, more true. Over time, the identity you once clung to, formed by pain, regret, or inherited narratives, begins to fall away. It no longer fits. In its place, a new self-image emerges, one that is more fluid, more forgiving, more grounded in possibility than in limitation. You begin to see yourself not as a fixed character, but as an evolving consciousness, capable of growth and reinvention at any stage. The implications of this are vast. Careers can be transformed when someone lets go of the thought, I'm not qualified, and embraces, I can learn. Relationships can be healed when someone shifts from, they always hurt me, to, I can express my needs and choose my boundaries. Health journeys can begin when, I'll never change, is replaced by, I'll start with one small choice today. In each case, the external transformation begins with a single internal shift, and these internal shifts often bring clarity. When we pause and ask, what am I thinking? And is this thought serving me? We create a break in the mental automation that dominates so much of our lives. In that space, truth can surface, not absolute truth, but your own authentic truth, the voice that often gets drowned out by fear, conditioning, or distraction. The ability to access that voice is one of the greatest benefits of choosing new thoughts, because that voice, your intuitive knowing, often speaks quietly. It says, you're capable, when the world says, stay in your lane. It says, you're loved. When your mind says, you're not enough, it says, Try again when everything else screams, give up. That voice is always available, but it is easiest to hear when your mind is no longer cluttered with outdated or harmful thoughts. This brings us to another layer of the conversation: discernment. Not every new thought is an empowered thought. Not every positive thought is authentic. Choosing new thoughts isn't about slapping a motivational quote over deep pain. It's not about denial or toxic positivity. It's about honest, compassionate realignment. A new thought doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be more true than the one it's replacing. I'm completely worthless is a lie. I'm figuring things out, and that's okay. May not be triumphant, but it's honest, kind, and powerful. The goal is not perfection, it's progression. Choosing new thoughts is a daily, moment-by-moment decision to move closer to alignment. Alignment with your values, alignment with your truth, alignment with your vision of who you want to be and how you want to live. And alignment does not always mean comfort. Sometimes the new thought will challenge you. It will stretch you. It may demand action or honesty or change. But even then, it is guiding you home to yourself. This journey is not linear. You may take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You may revisit old thoughts and wonder if you've failed. But each time you notice, each time you choose again, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. You become less reactive and more intentional. And this, in essence, is what it means to live consciously. To live consciously is to no longer be a passive observer of your thoughts, but an active participant in your mental life. It means engaging with your inner world with curiosity and care. It means no longer outsourcing your thinking to others, whether that be society, family, media, or past versions of yourself. It means reclaiming sovereignty over your mind. And in reclaiming that sovereignty, you rediscover choice, not just in thought, but in identity, in action, in destiny. Because the person who chooses new thoughts is also the person who begins to live from a new identity, no longer defined by old wounds. That person becomes a creator, a builder, a bridge between what is and what could be. And this bridge is built moment by moment, thought by thought. It is not a monument constructed in a single act of brilliance, but a path that unfolds beneath your feet as you walk it. Each new thought is a plank laid across the chasm of fear, doubt, or limitation. Each one brings you closer to the life you want to live. Not someday, but now. Because transformation is not a distant destination, it is a present moment practice. It is happening every time you notice a thought. Pause and ask yourself, is this leading me toward love or away from it? Toward expansion or contraction? Toward truth or illusion? These questions, simple as they may seem, are the keys to a more intentional life. When you live in this way, you begin to feel a shift, not only in your thinking, but in your energy. You become more present, more grounded, more connected. You start to see the threads that link your thoughts to your feelings to your actions, and your actions to your results. Life becomes less of a mystery and more of a dialogue between your inner world and the outer one. That dialogue becomes increasingly harmonious when your thoughts are chosen with care, when your mental space is no longer cluttered with fear-based narratives or unchallenged assumptions. Your inner voice becomes clearer. It starts to guide you toward experiences, people, and opportunities that resonate with your true self. Serendipities increase. Clarity becomes more frequent. Life begins to feel less like something happening to you and more like something you're co-creating. This co-creation is a profound act of personal agency. It affirms that you are not a victim of your past, not a prisoner of circumstance, and not a static character in an unchanging story. You are dynamic. You are evolving. And every new thought is a brushstroke on the canvas of your becoming. But with great power comes great responsibility. The more you understand the impact of your thoughts, the more mindful you must become about what you choose to believe, because your beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you are unlovable, you will behave in ways that reinforce that belief. If you believe you are capable and worthy, you will take risks, set boundaries, and seek out growth. Your outer life begins to mirror your inner world, and this is where true accountability begins. Not blame, not shame, but the realization that you hold the reins. There is deep liberation in this realization, and with it often comes a sense of compassion, not only for yourself, but for others. When you become aware of the stories you've been living in, you also become aware that others are doing the same. You begin to see the masks people wear, the thought patterns they're trapped in, the fears that drive their actions. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it helps you respond with understanding rather than reactivity. You stop taking things so personally. You stop projecting. You become less defensive, more curious. This compassion becomes a softening force. It allows for more meaningful connection. And as your relationships improve, so too does your sense of belonging. Because when you stop judging yourself for your thoughts, you stop judging others for theirs. You recognize that everyone is working through their own mental conditioning, their own inherited beliefs and internal conflicts. And in this recognition, there is room for grace. Grace is what allows you to stumble and still keep going. It's what lets you have a bad day, think a painful thought, or fall into old patterns without making it mean that you failed. Grace reminds you that healing is not about perfection, it's about presence. It's about continuing to show up, to choose again, even when it's hard. The practice of choosing new thoughts is, in many ways, a spiritual one. It is an ongoing return to truth, not an abstract or dogmatic truth, but a living truth, the one that arises from your own stillness, your own clarity, your own knowing. The more you practice tuning into this inner truth, the more aligned your life becomes. Decisions come more easily. Anxiety decreases. You begin to trust yourself, not because you have all the answers, but because you know how to listen. Listening is an underrated skill in personal transformation. Most of us are so busy trying to control, fix, or explain that we forget to truly listen to ourselves, to others, to life. But when we slow down and listen, we begin to notice the subtle guidance that is always present. That guidance often comes in the form of thoughts, new, gentle, quietly revolutionary ones, the kind that nudge you toward the next right step, even when you don't have the full map. And that is the beauty of choosing new thoughts. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to choose the next thought that feels more aligned than the last. That's it, one thought at a time, one breath at a time. Over time, these small shifts add up to big changes. They add up to a new story, a new self, a new life. A life that is not free of challenge, but full of meaning. A life that is not devoid of fear, but rich with courage. A life that is not always easy, but deeply alive. A life where the power to transform is not something you wait for. It is something you claim, moment by choosing your thoughts with intention, with awareness, and with love.